What are you? Don't worry. I'll give it back to you after this. I'm sure it's bugged, and we wouldn't want anyone listening in now, would we?
We'll take a few laps around the block, and then drop you back off at the hospital. Sorry, but we just need a bit of your time.
Very well. Who are you people?
We're just local detectives, but Kitakata-sensei is an acquaintance of ours. We know about Mitsuru-kun, and we know that 5 years ago, a man named Shinya Kawai mysteriously disappeared and died.
I have no idea what you're saying.
But you do. I know how this must come across right now, so I assure you, we aren't the ones posing a threat.
Fine. What is it you want, then?
All I want is the truth, in your own words, about Shinya Kawai, and how you carried out his murder.
You're mistaken. I didn't do it.
The other day you received a call from Kitakata-sensei, didn't you? He goes by the name Kawana now, and works as a handyman in Ijincho. He made that call because we needed to confirm something.
Confirm what?
Whether or not you were being watched by public security.
Public security, you say?
As it turns out, you are. Your cell phone is bugged. It can even use GPS to trace who's on the other end of the line. That kind of trace is only possible with cooperation from the cellular providers. Unless you're public security, who could pull something like that off in secret. They want to hit you where you're vulnerable. And that's what you are now after Kawana. Do you understand, Kusamoto-san? You must really be something special. You were never in this job for yourself. It fell into your lap as your predecessors fell like dominoes. That's why you don't owe anyone anything. You're free of constraints. And Mitsuru-kun's tragedy even gained you public sympathy on top of it. Combine all that with a capable bureaucrat like you, there's no telling what you could accomplish. You're cleaning up house. Things you know are the right moves. I understand even the cabinet gauges your opinion, but I think that's also made you some enemies.
I have more than a few enemies, and I have no doubt public security would comply with them. To be quite frank, the establishment is made up of various powers, and naturally each branch has its own agenda, which leads to all sorts. The more individuals who...
Are you implying it's public security's job?
The world we live in requires all kinds, but if you loosen the constraints too in that regard, public security's role is to in other words, the constraints so the fact that I am not caught up in all that.
Pesky to these establishment people, you're something to be excised.
I guess there's bullying among adults in high...
Yeah. Now we know why they were... And that's when they turned the spot... An event that was triggered by Akihiro Ihara's case. You know the one, I presume.
Yes.
An active duty policeman, exactly. Your enemies must have heard that and thought to themselves, what would Reiko Kusamoto have done? I'm guessing that's what prompted as the details of Ihara's case came to light. A group of thugs calling themselves ARC, all to find out that he was kidnapped 5 years ago.
I never...
Even after finding out Kawai disappeared, public security still had to verify it. But if they found out you were involved, that'd be a win for them. They'd finally know Reiko Kusamoto's weakness.
How long are you going to keep talking?
As public security figured out, the bullying cases involving Toshiro Ihara and your son share a common link. That link being Sawa-sensei. She was Mitsuru-kun's classmate and Toshiro Ihara's teacher. Not only that, she was also linked to Ihara's murder victim, Mikoshiba. She was his master teacher. So, not long after the murder, RK came to Ijincho and broke into her home. That must have been when they got Kawana's name out of her. I think Sawa-sensei suspected that Kawana was involved in Mikoshiba's murder. Then Soma steps in, with his professional interrogation skills, to beat and scare her into spilling everything. Kusamoto-san, you knew she was killed, right? Kawana should have told you over the phone.
Wait, are you not one of his colleagues? He said he wouldn't cause me any...
Kawana and I are competitors on a temporary ceasefire. We're not colleagues. Has anybody from public security...
I have my suspicions.
Or their name. I imagine what they wanted was to... Because if all they wanted was to eliminate you, some kind...
Yes.
Do you have any idea what these...
What they want is control of the pension fund.
Pension fund?
An independent agency within the ministry manages the national...
What?
And certain groups want to take bigger risks with that money. In other words, they believe that's the only way to secure...
I mean...
Of course. But if we lost the gamble, that's why the health ministry manages those funds.
Okay.
You do?
To be able to gamble all this taxpayer money to save the... And here's Kusamoto-san, head of the office. Her position has the power to take action. Not only does Kusamoto-san have the power, if a new vice minister were to try it, they'd be stopped cold by...
So that's why they wanted to...
Exactly. And if the 160 trillion yen gamble were to fail, you can blame the whole thing on Kusamoto.
Okay.
I'm guessing they've already contacted you?
That's an assumption.
How's your son doing now?
He could wake up any minute now. Of course, that's been true for the last 13 years.
I see.
We transferred him to Toto University Hospital just this year, hoping they could spur his recovery. But it turns out they don't do anything much different from the previous hospital. All I can do is wait.
I have to ask you about Shinya Kawai. You killed him 5 years ago. With your own hands, didn't you? I understand what your feelings must be towards Kawai, but was that really the only answer?
If you've spoken to Kitakata-sensei, then you must know about the video of how Mitsuru was treated.
I do.
Aside from Kawai, the other students pretended like nothing happened. They took no responsibility. They put on their sad faces, and they came to visit Mitsuru at the hospital. But looking back on it now, I don't think they really wanted Mitsuru to wake up. In fact, that's what they were checking on. And what did I do? I bowed my head and thanked them. It was only later that Kitakata-sensei showed me the video. That's when I knew that those kids going unpunished was wrong.
And your solution was to pull them into the quagmire? Make them accomplices in murdering Kawai?
If you already know so much, what more do you need to ask?
I get it now. Let me reiterate. We are not your enemy.
Then please, let me go.
Anything you want me to tell Kawana?
I do. He needs to run. Far away. Public security has their sights on him. His capture is not a question of if, but when. He's in danger if he remains in the country. And once public security has him, they will extract everything he knows.
You mean he'd be tortured?
Yes. Somewhere well beyond the public eye. No one can withstand what they do. He'd tell them everything. And as for me...
They would expose your vulnerability, making you their pawn.
Most likely. They'd gamble away the taxpayers' money, and I'd never purge the corruption in the health ministry.
I get that. But what does it matter?
What?
Because in my opinion, you need to turn yourself in, Kusamoto-san.
You want me to admit to manslaughter? You think I killed a real man? I say he was less than one. Shinya Kawai. He was little more than a subhuman brute. And you saw it. You saw what that brute did to my son. I hated Kitakata-sensei. He was an incompetent teacher. An idiot who turned a blind eye to Mitsuru being tortured. But that changed when he suddenly showed up 8 years later. And then he showed me that video. He said, every bully in that video, they deserved to be punished. That it was the only way to get closure.
You took him up on it? But you of all people should have known better.
True. You're right about that. I struggled with it quite a bit. It's an unconscionable act, no matter how deep your animosity runs. But Kitakata-sensei's words hung on. I couldn't get them out of my head. I saw for myself. I went to Kamurocho, where I'd heard Kawai was working, at a girls' bar. So you know, after Mitsuru jumped that day, Kawai came to me in tears to apologize. I hadn't seen him in all that time. If he'd frozen in place when he saw me, if he'd been the slightest bit apologetic, I might have been able to stay my hand.
I take it he didn't do any of that.
Right. He didn't even recognize my face. And that's hardly the worst part of it, actually. When he saw me, he took me for some bawdy cougar on the prowl for young men. If you've got the cash, I'll show you a good time, he said. All those tears he'd shed years earlier were a farce. But I knew that. Deep down, I'd already known that. That was it. That was the moment I lost all doubt about killing him. And as for those other kids who bullied Mitsuru, they should thank me they didn't share his fate. But that's why. That's why I don't feel like I have any sins to atone for. Every night I pray he will wake up. What more can you ask me to endure?
Kawana said something similar. But you think you can repeat all that? This time say it to her.
Isn't that Sawa-san?
You and Kawana can congratulate yourselves. You got vengeance on a monster. But what you're choosing not to see is that your actions had consequences for her. It's vicious. I've seen this before. Justice for one at the cost of another. Someone innocent always pays the price. I won't just sit here and watch as history tries to repeat itself. This phone isn't being traced by anyone. So, if you have a change of heart, just give me a call before you turn yourself in. That's all I had to say. We're back.
Right here okay, Yagami-san?
Yeah. I'm gonna go talk to Kawana. Need to tell him I met with Reiko Kusamoto.
He's gonna be pissed, you know? He's gonna try to rip you a new one.
That's true. So you might want to sit this one out.
You sure? 'Cause I'll totally take you up on that.